Welcome to the Making Bare Bones Custom Minis for Talespire. In the past, I have done some videos for adding custom minis to Talespire, but those videos typically had advanced features like adding animations or sound, which didn't make them ideal for beginners. So this video here, that's why it's called Bare Bones, we are going to do the bare minimum. We're going to take an asset, we're going to bring it into Talespire, static, no extra features like animations or sound. It's just going to be the bare minimum to get a custom asset into Talespire. So let's start. In order to put custom minis into Talespire, we need to make asset bundles. Previously, the custom mini plugin did support the object loader, which allowed you to just use a OBJ and MTL file and add assets that way. That is no longer supported. Calp only supports asset bundles, so you will have to use Unity to create an asset bundle. So in order to do that, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need the mesh file or files. This is basically what your mini looks like. Typically it comes in either an OBJ, STL, or FBX format, but other formats are also available. This video is not going to go through the process of actually making the mini. I'm going to assume that you have either downloaded a mini from some other place, or you have made it yourself and you know how to do that. This video is going to focus on how to bring that into Talespire. Similarly, with that mini, it's probably going to have some material/texture files, so we need to have those ready. Technically, it is possible to include a mini that has no materials and texture files. Then it will just be a solid single color. That is a possibility, but typically a mini will have a materials and texture files associated with it, so we need those. Then it is highly recommended to download the base width and human size box files from the Custom Minis channel on Discord. What these are for is so that we can size our mini appropriately. The human size box will show you the height of a human in Talespire, and the base width will show you how wide one tile is. So these can be used for, as a guideline to make sure that your asset that you're creating is the right size, because depending on where it comes from, it might be a lot bigger or a lot smaller. Then we're going to need some kind of a 3D editing software, such as Blender. I suggest Blender because it's free and it's powerful, but you can use other software if you would like. Next, we're going to need the Unity Asset Bundle build scripts. There's a bunch of build scripts that are floating around on the internet. I have created a slightly improved version of those. It builds exactly the same way, but afterwards it just puts your assets into nice subfolders so that they're kind of nicely organized and ready to go for Talespire. With Calp, that is no longer really necessary because your assets don't need to be in subfolders anymore. Yeah, so you can download either the regular asset bundle build scripts or get my improved ones from, I think it's the Custom Minis channel in Discord. Again, pinned message. And the very last thing that we're going to need is Unity itself. You need to make sure that the version you are getting is 2021.2.14 F1 or earlier, not later. The reason for that is this is the version that Talespire is built on, and if you use a newer version, it will not work. You will create an asset that will most likely not show up or will have issues. So you need to ensure that you are using this specified version here or earlier. I myself use something like 2019 421, I think it is. So you can go back many years, but you just can't be newer. Okay, so once you have all that ready, And it should be noted that this seems like a lot of things that you need, but really the last 4 things you're going to download once, prepare them once, and then you're just going to reuse them. So the only thing that you're going to be swapping every time you create a new asset is the first 2 items. And you can even in Unity kind of make the structure, make it basically like a template, so that it's going to be really easy when you drop in your mesh and your material files. But we'll get to that. So let's start downloading. I am not going to babysit your download. I'm sure you can do that on yourself, by yourself. It should be noted that both Blender and Unity are free. Unity does require a license as far as I remember, but if you are using it for personal use, you can go to the settings, I think it's settings and then licenses or something like that, and get a free license. So in the end, if you are using Unity for only personal projects, it is also free. Okay, so we're going to start with Blender. Open up Blender or whatever software you're using. I'm using Blender 291 here. I'm going to start a general session and delete the queue. Now I'm going to import in my asset. So I'm going to go to Files, Import, and my asset was an OBJ file, so I'm going to load that. And there we have it. There is my asset. And it looks like that my asset even came in with all its textures. If it did not, then you would go down to the Materials tab here. Once your asset is selected, go to the Materials tab. You can add in new materials and then fill in whatever files you happen to have. So if you have diffuse files, that would be base color. So you just open that up, add an image, and select your base color. Typically, most assets tend to have a metallic or a roughness, so you could add those maps in depending on what came with your asset. I'm not going to go through those details. That's a Blender thing, and there are tons of tutorials on how to properly set up your materials. So now that we have our asset in, we need to make sure that the asset is the right size. In order to do that, we are going to use those few sample files that we downloaded, and they are OBJ files. So I'm going to open that. And human size. So this is the size of a standard human. We can see here that this asset is much bigger than a standard human. So we are going to size this asset down. So I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to hit scale and scale it down. Okay. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. Now we've got our height about right, and I am going to import the other one, which is the width. Okay, and this shows us the size of a regular tile, and it looks like it also has a offset from the ground to indicate where the Talespire base is. So I'm going to want to look from the front view, and now I'm going to take my asset and raise it up a little bit so that the feet are where this box starts. What that will do is when you bring it into Talespire, when the Talespire base is there, you're not going to have those feet stuck inside it. You're going to have them standing on top of it. So I'm just going to go move along the z-axis, put it up there. Now my character is a little bit taller than a normal human. I could right now scale that back down. I'm going to keep it as is. He's in big bodysuit armor, so that would probably make him a little bit taller than an average human. Okay, and now we can delete that reference. So now we've got our asset ready, sized appropriately, and I recommend here that you export as an FBX. You can bring OBJs into Unity, but if you do it as an FBX, we can embed our materials and textures directly into the FBX, so that way we have one file that we bring into Unity, and it will hopefully set up our materials appropriately. So I'm going to select, then I'm going to go to Export, FBX. Now here is the important part. I am going to call this guy Trooper 2. Now, a couple things that you want to do is here in path mode, you want to select copy and then turn the icon right beside it on. By doing this, this will embed all the textures directly into the FBX, so you don't have to bring additional files over. I am going to select here selected objects because I didn't delete my camera and light. So by doing that, hopefully it will not bring the camera and light along. If it does, we can delete it in Unity. And I typically select the apply transform. Okay, now we just export, and we are ready to take this to Unity. Okay, so let's fire up Unity. If you fired up Unity, if you went through the Unity hub, then just create a new project. That should bring you to a page like this. Up at the top here, you can switch between Unity versions if you have more than one installed. As I said, any version before the Talespire version should work. I typically work on 2019 4.21, but that's just because that's what I had installed. Here we are going to select the 3D Core project, and over here we're going to give the project a name. So I'm going to go with Sample Trooper and hit Create. Depending on the power of your computer, this may take a while, but through the powers of editing, my computer will appear to be really fast. Anyways, here we have a basic 3D setup, and now we're going to customize this a little bit for making asset bundles and our minis. So I suggest by starting with the asset folder and creating a subfolder called content. The name doesn't really matter, but it's a nice folder to have so that everything that we're building will be underneath a common folder. Underneath that, I like to divide into mesh, materials, and textures. This hierarchy isn't absolutely necessary, but again, it keeps things organized and will also make it easier to select all of your files for inclusion in the asset bundle. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we need to add those scripts to be able to build asset bundles. So we are going to do that by going back to our assets folder and creating a folder called editor. Now, editor is a reserved Word folder. Anything that you drop in the editor folder, Unity will read, and if you have scripts in there, it will try to parse those scripts, and those scripts can modify the behavior of Unity itself. So right now, if I right click, you can see I don't have an option to build asset bundles. We're going to put in the script into the editor folder to make that happen. So now I need to navigate to the folder where I downloaded my scripts. So I'm just going to show in Explorer. Then I'm going to jump over to my documents, tutorials where I saved the script, copy, get to the back to the editor folder, paste the zip file in there, and then I'm just going to extract from here. And it looks like that my package already had a editor folder. So I'm just going to take that editor folder, go up one, and paste it back in. So now in the editor folder, we can see that we have build asset bundles and a build asset bundles meta. So now if I toggle back to Unity, hopefully Unity has recognized that. And if I go to, for example, content and right click, we can see, yes, now we have the build asset bundles option. Excellent. Okay, so this is kind of the template. This is kind of the minimum that I would save as a project. And anytime you want to, create more assets, I would just copy this so that you don't have to go putting the stuff into the editor again and making these folders. You can actually make a project, Unity project template, that like a real template that that would have all this. I don't really know how to do that, so I just save this as a project, and then anytime I need it, I make a copy of it. Whatever you do, that's up to you. So again, the hierarchy here, it's mostly for convenience and for organization. Realistically, you could just throw all of your stuff into one folder and pack it up, and Unity is not going to care. Talespire, when it's going to be trying to activate it, won't care, because the way that Unity projects work is typically whoever wants to make an instance of your asset bundle will call things by name. So they'll say, like, find this prefab. So it really doesn't matter where in the hierarchy it is, but keeping yourself organized will make it easier to troubleshoot problems and make less mistakes. So let's carry on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go inside our mesh folder. We're going to go import new asset. And then we're going to navigate to where we saved our FBX from Blender. Our FBX, and we're going to import that in. Now we can see here that our trooper has imported in. Looks like maybe the orientation is wrong. We'll have to possibly adjust that. We'll see in a moment. Okay, so now, first thing, select your mesh that you just imported, and over here in the inspector, first tab, model, you want to make sure that read write is enabled. I usually get rid of visibility in cameras and lights. If this has any, I don't want to use them, so I get rid of them and apply. Then we're going to go over to rig, because we're making a static mini. We're not doing any kind of animation. We don't really need a rig, so I'm going to switch it to none. If you keep it on what the default was, I think that was general or generic, it won't hurt anything, but theoretically it should probably take up more space, so I get rid of it. Animation, same thing. We're not doing any animations, so I'm going to actually uncheck import animations and apply that. And then we get to the materials tab. So on the materials tab, because we did our FBX and the embedded the textures right in, you can see that we have an option for extract textures and extract materials. Do them in the order that they're listed. So first extract your textures. I'm going to go over to our content textures folder that we made. This is going to complain or potentially complain about normals. Unity uses a different style of normals than, well, there's two main styles of normals. So some of your assets will have the wrong type of normals, but Unity has a fix for it. So if you get a pop-up like this, just say fix now. And now it's extracted the textures, so we can go onto the materials. And if you do it in this order, when you extract the materials, it should automatically pick up the textures and everything should be happy. So let's hope. Okay, so we can see now we have two materials here. We have our textures extracted, and the materials did automatically update. You can see it, they updated up here too. And you can see that our sample guy here does have textures upon him. So now we're going to take the mesh, drag it into the scene. Okay. Now it looks like here that the trooper is in the right orientation. So that is good. Yes, so now that your asset is in the scene, you want to make sure that it is at 0, 0, 0. This is very important because if you throw it into the scene at some other location, that offset may or may not be represented in Talespire depending on how the plugin works. For Cal, for example, any offset that you put here will show up in Talespire. So we want to make sure that here it is position is 0, 0, 0, rotation 0, 0, 0, scale 1, 1, 1. By having scale 1, 1, 1, it will be using the scale that you've carefully set up in Blender. Again, in theory, you could do all of your offsets, rotations, and scale in Unity. But as I said, the issue is that some plugins can go and alter these values here and therefore throw your scale, rotation, or position off. So it is always better to do it in Blender or whatever 3D software editing that you're using, because then the plugin doesn't really have access to that. It can still override it with these, but your scale will be beginning correct. Okay, so now that we have this in the scene, in this case, we don't really need to add anything more because we're not doing any special effects or anything like that. So we're going to go back here to our main folder, and we're going to take the trooper here, pull him right back, and it's going to pop up something like this, asking if we want to create a prefab. We're going to say, yes, we want to create an original prefab. And there we go. We now have an asset. Now, there is a couple of things that it is recommended to do. It is not absolutely necessary, but adding a info.txt file and a portraits.png file is highly recommended. The portraits.png file will define the picture that will show up in the library. If you do not provide one, you will get a very sad face for a picture. If you do not provide the info.txt file, it's going to automatically assume that it is of a creature type. It will put it in a group name called custom content, and it will default all of the other settings. Okay? So it is better to provide those. Like I said, your asset pack will work, or your asset bundle will work without it, but it will be and it will be more nicer asset if you do include them. So how do we include them? Well, the easiest way to include them is to steal them from another asset that you already have. So that's probably what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go to another folder and grab those. But if you don't have them, it's not a problem. The info.txt file is just an ordinary text file. So you can just drop in a text file that you've created. And the portraits.png is just a regular PNG file that is 128 by 128 in size. Please make sure that you make it exactly that size. If you use other sizes, it will not work. Okay, so let's add those. And poof, with the magic of editing, I have my two files there. Info and portrait.txt. I've grabbed these from my sound asset here, so they look like a speaker. And this is a ordinary text file. But again, you could just as easily have created a regular text file and portraits.png. You could probably do that even from within Unity. I would probably just go show in Explorer and toss those files in yourself. But how you get them is up to you. So we'll first go with our portrait. I am probably, since I don't have any nice picture, I'm going to probably use just Unity here for my portrait. So I'm going to capture the screen, open up the portrait that I copied over, paste in keep cans the same size. I have to make that a lot smaller. Something like that. Now, if I wanted to make the background transparent, which in the library is probably a good idea, I can just do something like that. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Yes, I'm using paint.net, free image editing software, which is fairly powerful for the fact that it's free. Alright, so there we go. We have our portrait, but hey, it doesn't look like it's transparent. Well, yes, you've got to go back to the image, and this is very important. You definitely want to set read-write to enable. If you don't, the portrait will not work. You also definitely want to set the compression to none. You don't need to do this for your other textures, but for the portrait file, the compression must be to none or it will not work. And now in our case, we also want the background to be transparent, so we're also going to select alpha is transparent. This is optional. The other two settings you have to set. This is optional. If you want to have a colored background, you can have a colored background. There we go. So now our portrait is ready. And now we're just going to edit our info.txt file. So here is our info.txt file. These are not all of the properties that are available. Currently, all of the listed properties are in the old extra asset registration documentation. If you look at the latest one, it's not there because it's now just a fake plugin. But I will be listing them again in the Calp documentation on the next update. A lot of the properties are, well, all of the properties realistically are optional, but the most important ones that you probably want to set is the kind. There's different kinds. Currently supported are creature and effect, but actually currently supported are creature, effect, and audio. Auras, transformation, and filter will be coming soon, but they are not supported yet. The different kind basically tells Talespire how to treat that type of asset. So if it's a creature, it means it's a regular mini, and it uses the Talespire shader. Creatures have the advantage that the stealth functionality works for them. Effects are just like creatures, but after they are placed down on the board, they switch their shader from the Talespire shader to whatever shader was in the asset bundle package. And that means if you're using, for example, a standard shader, you can actually use transparency, which you can't use with regular creatures. So if you want something transparent on your creature or semi-transparent, you'll have to make it a kind effect. The disadvantage of kind effect is that they currently do not hide if you apply the hide functionality, it won't hide. That was the same with previous versions of the plugin. I'm looking into possibly overcoming that, but as of right now, effects don't hide. The other kinds I won't get into right now since Calc doesn't have them yet. The other setting that you probably want to set is group name. That is basically under the creature's category, what group is it going to show up in. So you can either select one of the existing categories. My suggestion is if your asset fits one of the existing categories, try to use existing categories so that we don't end up with thousands of categories with one or two minis inside. But if your assets don't fit one of the existing categories, then you can create a new category by just entering the name here. Again, when making new categories, try to make the category somewhat generic so that it's not going to end up with one or two minis in it. You know, something like Blue Dragon is kind of very specific, whereas Dragons is more inclusive. So try to be a little bit more inclusive so that other people may be able to reuse your category as opposed to, again, having thousands of group names with one or two assets in them. And then you can fill in other stuff like tags. Tags currently aren't supported yet, or like nothing happens with them. They're eventually going to be used for filtering. Actually, I don't know. Maybe they already are. So filling them in any case is good. If the filtering doesn't work as of yet, it will in the future. And that way you won't have to go back and fill those in. Author, version, and comment is not used by the plugin at all. It's just there so that you can basically make a comment of who created it, what version it's at, in case you make modifications to it in the future, and additional comments, and so on and so forth. I've got here variant and chain loader, which currently aren't supported by Calp anyways. We do have the size. Size is the tile size. So if it's a medium character, 1 means 1 tile. If it's a large creature, it would be 2 for 2 tiles, and so on. There is also a mesh adjustments properties that you can actually set, which can change the size of the mesh as opposed to without changing the tile size. But again, that's kind of advanced topic, so we're not really going to discuss that. We're just going to keep this as is. Asset base is the type of base that you want to use. Currently, only default is supported. None and custom is currently not supported. It will be in the future, but not as of yet. So we're just going to change the name here to sample, or I think it was just Trooper 2. Kind, we're going to go with creature. We'll make a group of power suit creatures that's fairly specific, but vague enough that other people can use that. Trooper, power suit, something like that. Tags. Oh, sorry, this was a trooper in power suit, and here we can go with something like that. Okay, good enough. So we're going to save that. Get back to Unity. And now we can see that it's updated. Okay, so before I build this, I will make a comment here. I used Trooper 2 as the name for my prefab, which means that I need to make the asset bundle the same name. Again, Calp, Custom Asset Library plugin, still upholds the convention that whatever the prefab name is, the asset bundle needs to match, and vice versa. It actually works backwards. It looks at the asset bundle, and from that figures out what the prefab should be. So the two need to match. Now, if you are going to make an asset just for yourself or your group of players in a session, if you're not planning on sharing it on Thunderstore, this would be perfectly fine. However, if you're planning on sharing the asset in Thunderstore, then I highly recommend looking at the developers conventions. I think it's either in custom mini channel or possibly developer channel. I'm pretty sure it's in the custom mini channel pinned as a message. And it's got a bunch of different conventions for making assets that you're going to share. The most important one is to register a set of initials that you're going to prefix your assets with. And that's very important because it avoids naming conflicts. If two asset packs or more use the same name for an asset, it will cause a conflict. So if you're doing something very unique that has a very unique name, chances are you're not going to get a conflict. But if you're doing something like an assassin, well, there's lots of people that are probably going to create a similar asset. So that's why we recommend the convention of initials, asset name, and then actually a sequence number, so that if you're creating multiple, let's say, assassins, you could do a 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. Okay? So in my particular case, my registered initials are LA for Lord Ashes. So I would actually create something like LA Trooper 01, for example. Now, if somebody else creates a trooper, it's not going to conflict because they're not going to be using the LA prefix, because that's registered for me. And if I ever create a second trooper or a third trooper, I can just increase the number at the end, and it's not going to be naming conflict. Okay, so now we have the name. I'm going to copy that name. And now in the bottom here, you can see asset bundle. We're going to go to new, and I'm going to paste in that name. I found that there's a bug in Unity that if I go to asset bundle and if I go new, sometimes it prevents me from typing into the asset box a new name. So that's why I like to do the copy and paste, because the copy and paste works. So I've just set this to the asset bundle that we need. In theory, if you just select your prefab for the asset bundle, all of the textures, the meshes, and materials should automatically get added to the asset bundle. I found that in some cases that doesn't happen, so I always go in, select my folders, and force them to be included in the asset bundle. This is what I was referring to earlier. By making these folders, I don't have to go in and mark each one of those files as being part of the asset bundle, because if I include the folder, it includes everything underneath it. So now I've got my folders part of the asset bundle, I've got the prefab, and of course we need to do the same thing to the info.txt file and the portraits. The portraits and info.txt file will never get added in automatically to the asset bundle because they are not a Unity concept. They are strictly a concept for making asset bundles for Talespire. They are something that our plugins use, but it's not a normal Unity component that you would need for other games, for example, if you were using Unity to make assets for other games. Okay, and the last thing we do, right-click and build asset bundles. If everything happens as it should, you should see a custom, you should see an asset bundle folder get created. And depending on which script you used, you will either see all of your asset bundles created directly in that folder, or if you used my improved scripts, you will see a hierarchy of Talespire custom data, minis, and then each of the asset bundles within their own folder. Now, the Talespire custom data folder is now obsolete as per my previous video. Calp doesn't use it anymore. So you can basically just go down to the minis folder and copy that over into the local content custom data folder, or put it into your pack depending on what you're trying to do. And that was outlined in my custom mini assets in Talespire part 2 video. So if you need to refresh yourself on how to now take your asset bundle and put it into Talespire, part 2 video will tell you how to do that. So that's basically it. You've successfully made an asset bundle for your mini, and you can use it in Talespire. That's about it. I know these videos don't have great production quality, but they do have a lot of useful information. So please appease the YouTube algorithm goddess by casting the subscribe spell and then blasting your Eldritch Blast at the like button. It'll really help me out.